Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we are diving deep into the fascinating and powerful story of the Washington quarter dollar, a coin that is far more than everyday pocket change and stands as one of the most important and long-running designs in American numismatic history, because its creation in 1932 was not accidental or routine but deeply connected to national memory, economic hardship, and the desire to honor leadership at a time when the United States was struggling through the Great Depression, and unlike many earlier coins that changed designs frequently, the Washington quarter was born from a special commemorative idea marking the 200th birthday of George Washington, whose image had never appeared on a regular circulating silver coin before this moment, making the quarter instantly symbolic and historic from the very first strike. And originally, the coin was intended as a one-year commemorative replacement for the Standing Liberty quarter, but public response was so positive and the design so well received that officials decided to keep it permanently, unknowingly launching a series that would span generations: wars, economic booms, metal crises, and sweeping changes in minting technology. And the obverse design created by sculptor John Flanagan was inspired by a classical bust of Washington, presenting him with a calm, dignified expression that conveyed stability and leadership, qualities desperately needed in 1932 when unemployment was widespread and confidence in the economy was fragile, while the reverse featured a proud heraldic eagle with outstretched wings perched on a bundle of arrows, symbolizing strength through unity and readiness to defend the nation. And these design choices were not decorative accidents but deliberate messages pressed into metal for millions of Americans to see and hold every day. And early Washington quarters were struck in 90% silver, giving them intrinsic value and a satisfying weight that modern collectors still admire. And production took place at multiple mints under the authority of the United States Mint, including Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, each leaving subtle differences in strike quality, luster, and survival rates that would later become critical factors in determining rarity and value. And because these coins entered circulation immediately during hard economic times, very few people thought to save them, resulting in heavy wear on most surviving examples and making high-grade early Washington quarters genuinely scarce today. And this scarcity is especially evident in the earliest issues, where low mintages combined with intense circulation created legendary key dates that collectors still chase decades later. And beyond mintage numbers, what truly defines the early Washington quarter era is how these coins lived real lives, passing through countless hands, paying for meals, bus fares, newspapers, and daily necessities, embedding themselves into the rhythm of American life. And during World War II, the quarter continued to circulate as a silver workhorse while the nation mobilized for global conflict, carried by factory workers, soldiers, and families supporting the war effort, further increasing wear and reducing the number of pristine survivors. And yet through all these changes, the design remained steady and recognizable, reinforcing trust in the currency and familiarity in a rapidly changing world. And this consistency is one of the reasons collectors love the Washington quarter series, because it allows them to study how history, economics, and minting practices influence value without the distraction of constant design overhauls. And when you hold an early Washington quarter today, you are not just holding silver, you are holding a silent witness to Depression-era hardship, wartime sacrifice, and post-war recovery, all captured in a coin that was never meant to be rare or collectible, yet became both through circumstance rather than intention. And this deep historical connection is what makes the Washington quarter dollar such a powerful and rewarding subject for collectors, historians, and everyday enthusiasts alike, setting the stage for dramatic changes that would soon arrive as silver prices rose, public behavior shifted, and the future of American coinage entered an entirely new chapter. As the Washington quarter dollar continued to circulate through the mid-1930s and into the 1940s, it quietly transformed from a commemorative-inspired issue into a permanent pillar of American coinage. And this transition is critical to understanding why the series holds such depth for collectors today, because unlike coins created purely for daily commerce, the Washington quarter carried an inherited sense of reverence and symbolism from the moment it entered circulation, and this symbolic weight influenced how the public perceived and handled the coin, even if subconsciously, as the calm, authoritative portrait of George Washington became a familiar presence in wallets and purses across the nation, reinforcing ideas of stability and continuity during a time when both were desperately needed. And as production ramped up year after year, the United States Mint refined its processes. But the realities of large-scale silver coinage meant that consistency was difficult to achieve, leading to noticeable differences in strike strength, surface quality, and luster between coins from different mints and even within the same year. And these subtle differences, largely ignored at the time, are now among the most important aspects collectors study when evaluating Washington quarters, because they reveal how minting conditions, die wear, and press pressure affected the final appearance of each coin. And during this era, the Denver and San Francisco mints often produced coins with weaker strikes compared to Philadelphia, especially on the high points of Washington's hair and the eagle's chest, creating condition rarities that are far more elusive than raw mintage figures suggest. And as America moved closer to World War II, silver quarters became even more heavily circulated. As industrial production surged, employment increased, and money moved rapidly through the economy, subjecting coins to constant handling, abrasion, and wear, which explains why fully struck, sharply detailed examples from the late 1930s and early 1940s are exceptionally difficult to find today, and yet paradoxically, this heavy use also ensured the quarter's place in American daily life, making it one of the most trusted and widely recognized denominations in the country. And during the war years, the Washington quarter symbolized more than purchasing power, because it was used to buy war bonds, pay for transportation, and support households coping with rationing and uncertainty, embedding the coin deeply into the emotional and economic fabric of the nation. And after the war ended, the quarter remained unchanged in design, reflecting a desire for normalcy and continuity as soldiers returned home and the economy shifted toward consumer growth. But beneath this surface stability, important changes were brewing, because rising silver demand and increasing production costs were beginning to strain the feasibility of maintaining precious metal coinage indefinitely. And while the public remained largely unaware of these pressures, collectors looking back can see the early signs of a coming transformation, particularly in the gradual decline of strike quality as mint priorities shifted toward output rather than artistry. And throughout this period, the Washington quarter served as a silent barometer of national conditions, absorbing economic stress, technological change, and public behavior into its metal and surfaces. And for modern collectors, this era offers invaluable insight into how coins reflect their time, because each worn example tells a story of circulation and use, while each sharply preserved specimen represents a rare survivor that escaped decades of handling by chance rather than intention. And this contrast between common worn coins and elusive high-grade examples is what gives the Washington Quarter series its enduring challenge and appeal, encouraging collectors to look beyond dates and mint marks and instead focus on strike quality, surface preservation, and historical context, all of which elevate the series from a simple set of coins into a rich narrative of American life, economic resilience, and evolving minting practices, laying the groundwork for the dramatic shifts that would soon redefine the very composition and future of the Washington quarter dollar. As the Washington quarter dollar entered the 1960s, it faced one of the most dramatic turning points in its entire history, a transformation driven not by design preference but by powerful economic forces, because rising silver prices, global demand, and hoarding behavior began to threaten the stability of everyday U.S. coinage. And by the early part of the decade, Americans were actively pulling silver quarters out of circulation, recognizing that their metal content alone was approaching or even exceeding face value, which created shortages in commerce and forced the federal government to take decisive action. And this moment marks the true dividing line between the classic and modern eras of the Washington quarter, because in 1965, the United States Mint officially ended the use of 90% silver in circulating quarters and replaced it with a copper-nickel clad composition bonded to a pure copper core, a decision that fundamentally altered how the coin felt, sounded, and was perceived by the public. Even though the familiar portrait of George Washington remained unchanged, preserving visual continuity while the substance beneath the surface shifted entirely. And this transition was not smooth or immediately accepted, as many Americans distrusted the new clad coins, viewing them as inferior to silver and quickly distinguishing them by weight, ring, and color, which led to confusion in circulation and further accelerated the disappearance of silver quarters from daily use. And during the first few clad years, especially 1965 through 1967, mint marks were temporarily removed to discourage hoarding and speculation, creating a unique sub-era within the Washington quarter series that challenges collectors to rely on strike characteristics and subtle differences rather than mint identifiers. And production numbers during this time were enormous, as the mint struggled to replenish circulating coinage, resulting in quarters that were often weakly struck, hastily produced, and poorly handled, which is why high-grade early-clad Washington quarters are surprisingly rare today despite their massive mintages. And this period teaches one of the most important lessons in modern numismatics, that rarity is not always about how many coins were made, but how many survived in excellent condition, because while hundreds of millions of clad quarters were struck annually, very few were saved with care, as collectors initially dismissed them as uninteresting base metal coins with no future premium. And this widespread neglect created condition rarities that are only now being fully appreciated, particularly in mint state grades where sharp hair detail on Washington and full feather definition on the eagle are exceptionally hard to find. And as the clad era progressed into the 1970s, the Washington quarter continued to reflect broader economic realities, including inflation, rising production costs, and changing public attitudes toward money. As Coins increasingly became seen as disposable tools rather than durable objects of value, leading to rough handling, heavy bag marks, and diminished surface quality straight from the mint. And yet within this environment, varieties and errors flourished, as high-speed presses and overworked dies produced double dies, die cracks, cuds, off-center strikes, and other anomalies that slipped into circulation unnoticed, providing fertile ground for collectors who understood that even modern quarters could possess uniqueness and value. And this realization marked a philosophical shift in collecting, expanding interest beyond silver content and early dates into the realm of modern minting science and production flaws. And at the same time, the Washington Quarter remained deeply embedded in American daily life, facilitating commerce during decades of social change, technological advancement, and economic uncertainty, silently adapting to a new metallic reality while maintaining its iconic design. And for collectors today, the clad transition era represents both a cautionary tale and an opportunity, because it demonstrates how quickly assumptions about value can change and how overlooked coins can become tomorrow's prizes. And by studying this period carefully, one gains a deeper appreciation for the Washington Quarter not just as a coin, but as a living record of how economic pressure, government policy, and public behavior intersect to shape the evolution of money, setting the stage for the next great reinvention of the quarter, when it would move beyond metal and mintage to become a national storytelling platform unlike anything seen before. As the Washington Quarter moved beyond the initial shock of the clad transition and settled into the late 1970s and 1980s, the coin entered a phase that many collectors once dismissed as unimportant, but which has since become one of the most educational and revealing periods in the entire series, because during these decades the quarter was produced in staggering quantities, struck at high speeds, and handled with far less care than its silver predecessors, reflecting a broader shift in how society viewed coinage, not as something to be saved or admired, but as a purely utilitarian object meant to circulate quickly and endlessly. And this mindset profoundly affected the survival of high-quality examples. As mint set quality declined, bag marks became common, and weak strikes were widely accepted as normal, meaning that truly sharp, lustrous, well-centered Washington quarters from this era are far scarcer today than raw mintage figures suggest. And this is where modern collectors gain a critical advantage, because by understanding how production pressures influence quality, they can identify condition rarities hiding in plain sight, especially coins with strong hair detail on George Washington, clean fields, and full eagle feather separation, attributes that were rarely prioritized at the time of striking. And throughout this period, the United States Mint continued refining minting technology, introducing faster presses, longer-lasting dies, and improved alloy bonding techniques. But these advancements often came at the cost of artistry, as dies were used longer than ideal, resulting in mushy details and flat relief that dominate many circulation strikes from the era. And yet paradoxically, these same production realities created fertile ground for mint errors and varieties, as stressed dies cracked, shifted, or clashed, producing dramatic die breaks, retained cuds, broad strikes, off-center coins, and doubled dies that escaped detection due to the sheer volume of output. And for collectors willing to search rolls, mint sets, or old collections, this era offers excitement not through precious metal content but through visual uniqueness and minting history frozen in metal. And as the quarter continued circulating through the inflationary 1980s, public interest in coin collecting waned, further reducing the number of people saving pristine examples. Which is why population reports today often show surprisingly low numbers of high-grade coins for certain dates that were minted in the hundreds of millions. And this disconnect between perceived commonness and actual condition rarity is one of the most misunderstood aspects of the Washington Quarter series, because it challenges the assumption that old silver automatically equals valuable while modern clad equals worthless, revealing instead that value is driven by survival, demand, and quality rather than age alone. And as the series approached the 1990s, subtle changes in strike consistency and surface finish began to appear, hinting at the mint's gradual shift toward improved quality control in response to collector criticism. And the growing popularity of proof and mint set collecting, and proof Washington quarters from this era, especially those struck at San Francisco, showcase a completely different level of craftsmanship, with mirrored fields and frosted devices that stand in sharp contrast to their circulation counterparts, reminding collectors that even in a mass production environment, artistry was still possible when intention and care were applied. And these proof issues, while often affordable, provide valuable reference points for studying design details, die states, and overall strike quality, helping collectors better evaluate circulation strikes. And taken together, this middle modern era of the Washington Quarter teaches one of the most important lessons in numismatics, that neglect today can create rarity tomorrow, and that coins ignored by one generation may become prized by the next as survival rates decline and historical perspective deepens. And for anyone building a Washington quarter collection with long-term vision, understanding this period is essential, because it reveals how economic attitudes, production priorities, and public behavior quietly shape the future rarity and desirability of coins that once seemed ordinary, setting the stage for the quarter's most dramatic reinvention yet, when it would transform from a familiar circulating coin into a nationwide collecting phenomenon that redefined how Americans interacted with their pocket change. As the Washington quarter dollar entered its most transformative era in the late 1990s, it experienced a rebirth unlike anything previously seen in American coinage, because in 1999 the United States Mint launched the groundbreaking 50-state quarters program, a bold initiative that kept the familiar obverse portrait of George Washington while completely reinventing the reverse, turning the quarter into a rotating canvas of American identity, history, and regional pride. And this program did far more than introduce new designs. It fundamentally changed how the public interacted with coins, because for the first time in generations, ordinary citizens actively searched their change, checked mint marks, and saved coins straight from circulation, driven by curiosity rather than silver content or traditional collecting habits. And families, schools, and casual hobbyists across the country began filling albums and folders, learning state symbols, founding dates, landmarks, and historical themes directly from the design struck into metal. And this massive public engagement redefined the Washington quarter from a utilitarian object into an educational and cultural tool, demonstrating that circulating coinage could inspire learning and participation on a national scale. And production during this period reached astonishing levels, with billions of quarters struck over the 10-year run of the program. Yet even within this enormous output, condition and strike quality remained key determinants of long-term value, because coins were still produced primarily for circulation, meaning bag marks, weak strikes, and surface abrasions were common, and truly pristine examples with strong luster, sharp details, and clean fields remain surprisingly difficult to locate today, especially for certain states and mint combinations, and alongside standard issues. The program also introduced collectors to new finishes and formats, including proofs, silver proofs, and specially packaged mint sets, expanding the range of collecting options and attracting a new generation of enthusiasts who might otherwise have never considered numismatics. And as the state quarters program concluded in 2008, its success directly inspired the America the Beautiful Quarters program, which once again used the Washington obverse to anchor a series of rotating reverse designs, this time celebrating national parks, historic sites, and natural landmarks, further reinforcing the quarter's role as a storytelling medium that connects art, geography, and history. And throughout these modern programs, the Washington portrait served as a unifying symbol, linking contemporary designs to the coin's Depression-era origins and reminding collectors that innovation and tradition can coexist within the same series. And from a numismatic perspective, this era also produced a new class of varieties and errors, as complex die preparation, high-speed presses, and layered clad planchets occasionally resulted in striking anomalies, die clashes, misalignments, and other errors that captured collector interest, proving once again that even modern coins can possess individuality and scarcity when examined closely. And for advanced collectors, these programs offer endless specialization opportunities, from assembling complete high-grade circulation sets to focusing on silver proofs, era coins, or design themes. While for beginners, they provide an accessible entry point that blends affordability with educational value, and perhaps most importantly, this era reshaped public perception of coin collecting itself, transforming it from a niche hobby into a widely shared experience that united generations around a simple yet powerful idea: that history can be held in the palm of your hand. And as the Washington quarter continued to circulate alongside newer designs, it carried forward a legacy that now spanned nearly a century, proving that a coin originally created as a commemorative could evolve into one of the most influential and culturally significant circulating coins in the world, setting the stage for a deeper appreciation of its long-term legacy, rarity, and place in both numismatic history and American culture as a whole. As we reach the final chapter in the long and evolving story of the Washington quarter dollar, it becomes clear that this coin's legacy is not defined by a single era, metal, or design variation, but by its remarkable ability to adapt while preserving its identity, because from its silver beginnings during the Great Depression to its role as a modern storytelling platform through commemorative programs, the Washington quarter has mirrored the economic priorities, cultural values, and technological capabilities of the United States across nearly a century. And even in the most recent years, as digital payments, cards, and mobile wallets reduce the practical use of physical coinage, the quarter continues to circulate and remain relevant, quietly reminding people of the tactile connection between history and everyday life. And for collectors, this modern phase offers both reflection and opportunity, because while some may assume that contemporary coins lack future value, history has repeatedly shown that overlooked eras often become the most intriguing once time reveals how few pristine examples actually survived, and this truth applies powerfully to late America, the beautiful quarters, recent circulation strikes, and even business strike coins that were produced in lower quantities as demand for coinage declined, and as mintages dropped in the late 2010s and early 2020s. Especially during periods of economic disruption, survival rates once again became uncertain, creating the conditions for future rarity that today's collectors are only beginning to understand, and through all these changes, the portrait of George Washington has remained a constant, anchoring the series with a sense of permanence and national continuity that few coins in the world can claim, and this unbroken visual link allows collectors to trace subtle design modifications, changes in relief, minting quality, and surface finish across decades, transforming the Washington quarter into an extraordinary long-term study in numismatic evolution, and beyond the technical aspects, the quarter's cultural impact cannot be overstated, because it is one of the few coins that nearly every American has handled countless times, making it both deeply familiar and surprisingly complex, and this duality is what gives the series its enduring appeal, as beginners can start with common dates and modern issues, while advanced collectors can spend a lifetime pursuing high-grade silver keys, elusive clad condition rarities, dramatic mint errors, and perfectly struck proofs, each representing a different layer of the same story, and when viewed as a whole, the Washington Quarter series teaches some of the most important lessons in coin collecting. That value is shaped by history, preservation, demand, and context, not just age or metal content, and that coins created for everyday use often become the most meaningful historical artifacts precisely because they were never meant to be saved. And as the future of physical currency continues to evolve, the Washington Quarter stands as a powerful reminder that even small, ordinary objects can carry extraordinary stories, connecting generations through shared experience, national memory, and enduring design. And for collectors, historians, and enthusiasts alike, studying this coin is not just about assembling sets or chasing value, but about understanding how a nation expresses itself through money, adapts to change, and preserves identity across time. And with that final reflection, the journey of the Washington Quarter Dollar comes full circle, from a commemorative tribute to a living symbol of American resilience, innovation, and continuity, a coin that will continue to educate, inspire, and captivate for generations to come. And thanks for watching.